Hello, Mike. Tell us who you are and what you do.
All right. Hey, I'm Mike Kenny. I'm a 22-year Army vet, retired in 2015 as a lieutenant colonel. I served in the infantry and the special forces. West Point grad, year group 93. And after 22 years, um, I took the helm of a then fledgling nonprofit, Warriors Ascent, that helps veterans and first responders with post-traumatic stress. So now, 7 years later, now 57 cohorts or class iterations later, 500 plus, say, veterans and first responders helped, lives, I'll say, saved and changed. Here we are. So that's who I am. That's what I do in a nutshell.
Wow.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've been really excited to talk with you because I heard a lot of good things from people about Warriors Ascent and people suggesting to reach out to you. So,
Oh, sweet. I appreciate
yeah.
that.
Well, it's funny. I don't think I even mentioned it. I don't, of course, when you and I talked at the art show last fall, of course, it's so long ago, but
I know.
I had gotten some information from my brother-in-law who's a firefighter, and I didn't realize until after talking to you that your name and Warriors Ascent was on that list actually of places to look into because he's not a veteran, but he works with a lot. And so to
Yeah.
kind of help our cause and places to check out. So that was just kind of funny to me. I'm like, well, I have definitely looked into them. So what would you say is the primary focus or the main benefit for veterans going through Warriors Ascent?
I mean, that's a great question. Yeah, no. So, um, yeah, I'll give you not our shameless pitch, but it'll be encapsulated in some of that. We like to say that we empower our participants to take ownership of their lives and healing. And we do so by providing them the tools to heal and tend the mind, body, and soul. So it's a 5-day holistic program wherein we teach them. I'll get a little esoteric, but I'll try to, kind of keep it simple and basic. But the first day is what I'll call metacognitive tools. So bottom line, thinking about your thinking, some of it's cognitive behavioral. Bottom line is what we're getting at for them is, hey, think about how it is that your mind perceives things. And without going into too many details, we talk about Daniel Kahneman's thinking fast and slow with system 1 and 2. We talk cognitive behavioral concepts, that your thoughts drive your emotions, which drive your actions. So that when you've got these behaviors that aren't serving you, or even just these emotions and feelings, you can always walk them back to certain thoughts. And then we'll talk about cognitive distortions and things like that. So that first day is foundational in helping people to really understand how it is that they think, and then how that translates into, emotions and actions. The remainder is predominantly self-care practices. So meditation, mindfulness, yoga, nutrition, sleep. Other aspects are really just, I'll say, the tribe. And I'm sure you guys understand. You've got a lot of veterans and first responders. They've either left the service or, whether retirement, injury, what have you. They've lost their tribe. They've lost their sense of belonging. I ask all the time, hey, what is it that you're feeling? What's ailing you? It's a sense of isolation. It's a sense of being alone. It's a sense that nobody understands where I'm coming from. Nobody can relate. And what's great about Warriors Ascent, in addition to all the modalities that we provide them, is we give them that unity. And yes, they may be there with, a firefighter, a police officer, a, EMT, and a veteran, but they all share that same
Yeah.
type of, I'll say, trauma through service and seeing bad stuff. And you see it, once they share their stories openly on that first day, because of course we'll ask, what brought you to us? What are you dealing with? And it's, a licensed clinician that does that, not yours
Right.
truly. Yeah, they'll open up and say, hey, these people get me. They really intuitively understand. We do some, I'll call them cathartic activities. Yeah. And then that is, that's it. That's our program in a nutshell. Yeah, we've got a longitudinal study done on our program that covers data over the course of a couple of years that just recently came out that I can invite your attention to in separate correspondence.
Yeah. No,
But
that's kind of resourceful. That's kind of resourceful link for sure.
Yeah.
Anything you want to put out, whether it's on your website or we're finding ways to just post general documents on our site for someone to look through. So however you want to do that, but you said several things there that are really important, a couple of which we've even talked about on the show. For instance, we first had this conversation with Monkey Brain Art, actually, and then we've had it with a couple people since, is you build the camaraderie in the military because you're told be here at this time in this uniform and stand here, and then through pain and suffering you forge friendships like you're forging steel. And so when you don't have that forced be here this time, do this, say this and everything, then it is weird. And even though you go to work and everything, it's just different. It just is. And so when you have groups like yours, like Monkey Brain Art, it's a great way to like, hey, here's people with a similar experience, which builds on the other point we've talked about. I didn't even know this till Nick told me, but about why AA is one of the most successful programs when it comes to dealing with people dealing with their issues. And it's because instead of talking to somebody that they don't know their background, instead they're dealing with people who are dealing with or have dealt with the same things. So it's so much easier to open up to people that understand you on that deeper level. So yeah, and then I also like that you're giving the tools for people to work on things themselves versus, oh, tell us about it. All right, now we'll move on. So it's that prepping the mind, I think, because I've talked to some people about suicide prevention things. And one of the interesting things, the conversations I had, I don't know if I've talked about this on the show either, but I think a lot of preparing the mind for what it can go through is a big piece of it. So for instance, like you've got suicide prevention in the Army, and then you also have MRT, mental resilience training. And so I think a key to suicide prevention is making the mind resilient. And so talking to somebody actually from Wounded Warrior, we were talking about it, and he was talking about the success they've had with the Army's suicide awareness program. But parallel, MRT was started at the exact same time that the latest program was started. So my question was, which I don't have an answer, spoiler alert, how do you divide the success? Not that it necessarily matters, but if one is better than the other, maybe you bolster that one. And of course, MRT is a lot more complicated and longer to go through. But so to bring this back around, laying the plane of what I'm talking about, you talking about, teaching them how they think and understanding, because that kind of provides that base knowledge to, I would assume, help them manage their emotions and thoughts and collect them better, or be able to deal with them, especially the scary ones, in a different way that's probably more productive. Am I onto something there?
No, you are. You've touched on a lot, and I'll try to be as concise and to the point as I can be. I'll say for my part, as a former special forces guy, and you guys may or may not know, I mean, there's the commando aspects, door kicking, all that stuff, but by and large, Green Berets, Army Special Forces, we're teachers and instructors, so that's what we do predominantly. We build partner capacity, as we say, through joint training and various other things, both in a counterinsurgency environment and an unconventional warfare environment. But that building partner capacity aspect of what we do, that part of our portfolio and mission set's really important, because in the end, we want to teach a man or woman to fish, right? Versus give them a fish. Because we don't want to be fighting people's battles for them in perpetuity. And what we used to say is we want to work ourselves out of a job. That's the goal. Now, there's always that partnership aspects. It's not like we've trained you, we never want to see you again. We've got ongoing partnerships with, partner nations and armies that we liaise with. But bottom line is, in the end, we want them to be able to fend for themselves. Long story short, I'll say for my part, I've brought that ethos to Warriors Ascent. I don't want people to forever be beholden to us. We're always going to be there to lend that moral support and that tribe, that, positive reinforcement. So it's not the case that we're like, all right, we're done with you. You've been trained. Bye. Mm-hmm. No, there's that family, that tribe, that camaraderie. But I will have failed, and we as Warriors Ascent will have failed in our mission if we've not given people the tools for them to, in essence, fend for themselves.
Yeah.
And that is so very, very important. So getting back to what you were saying with call it the value proposition, right? So our value proposition, 5 days. I say 5 days of what right looks like, what right looks and feels like. The reason being is, hey, in those 5 days, we take people by the hand and, hey, we're going to teach you this. We're going to, those mental frameworks, lifestyle skills and practices, meditation, mindfulness, yoga, eating right. They get good food with us. There's no desserts and candies and ice cream. There's no drinking. You're going to eat right. And what I'll say up front is, hey, come Friday, I can guarantee you're going to feel better. And the question is, why is that? Is there a secret to that? It's because we made you do all these right things. No, so that is it in a nutshell. So 5 days, and the feedback I've gotten from people that have been in therapy for months, if not years, they'll be like, I had better effects in 5 days than I've had, in therapy for the longest time. So that, I'll say, is a value proposition. We get a lot done in 5 days. Now, all of that said, never to overpromise. Not at all saying that people are going to be healed in 5 days and their life's a cloudless sky going forward. We liken ourselves, and to our Army guys, like pathfinders, right? So we put people on the path, we show them the path, but really it's up to them to walk the path. It's their journey. We can't do that for them. We can kind of help them, but that really is our role in a nutshell. So we do a lot in those 5 days. We build their capacity. We're there for them. And we've had some really great outcomes, as evidenced by that, that data set, that study that I alluded to.
I guess my other question is, are we limited to 5 days? I'd kind of like to stay there. Sounds pretty awesome.
No, I know. A lot of people don't want to go. I mean, most actually, hey, they want to get back to their lives.
Right.
Certainly.
Yeah.
But no, a lot, the bonds, the friendship that they have, getting back to, what you were saying initially, which is, people come together and, they share that. Yeah. We've got people that those cohorts, they stick together, they stay in connection with one another for, forever and ever, for the longest time. But what I like about the 5 days, obviously, is I'll say our ideal client, right, is somebody that, hey, they're in the workforce. They're holding on, but they know something is amiss. And they're like, if I don't get help, I don't know how much longer I can hold on. So 5 days, we're like, give us 5 days. We think we can give you the tools to get you back in the fight, and not even just get back in the fight, but we put you on the trajectory to healing. So we'll get you back in the fight. And if you do the things that we've taught you, you will be better. You will flourish. Now, it's not that you won't have setbacks. Everyone will, but you do those right things and things are going to be better for you.
All right.
Yeah, I really like that. I feel like you're kind of showing them that they have control. Like, you're not the victim. You know what I mean? Like, you actually can make a change, and you know what I mean?
No, you hit right on it. It's agency. It's a sense of agency and empowerment. It's this notion that you have a level of control of your life. Now, you don't, and we'll say you don't have control over every facet of your life.
Right.
Certainly. But there's some that, I hate to say it, I hesitate to say, that might play the victim at times. Everybody does. I mean, you do it, I do it. Everyone's like, why did this happen to me? Why can't people do that? Why this? And you're just like, let me check myself. I can't control other people. I can't control this. I can't control that. All I can control, I'll quote Marcus Aurelius, right? Stoic philosopher, emperor. He says, the only thing you can control is your own reasoned thoughts. So that's it. But understanding that you can only control the controllable. And that's that sense of agency. And that's important, because if you don't have that, you're right. You feel like a victim, like you feel you have no say so, no agency whatsoever in your life and what happens to you. And that's very disempowering.
Absolutely.
Wow. Amazing. And so, say somebody's listening and they think that they're the perfect fit for your program. Where could our listeners go to get more information and kind of start that? So
warriorsascent.org, so WARRIORSASCENT, warriorsascent.org, and click on there. You'll have all the information you need. Sign up, go to our application. My gal Tammy will reach out to you once you fill out an application and learn all about you, and see whether or not, you're a good candidate or not. And I'll invite your attention to another resource, our YouTube channel, not to be a nerd, but I put some time into that really, because we all know you got to tell your story, video storytelling. And if a picture speaks 1,000 words, well, then a video is going to speak 100,000 words, right?
That's what I said. That's exactly what I say.
You know that. That's why you're doing this, right?
Absolutely.
No, yeah. No, so we know that too. And I've done, and you may chuckle, you may look at that YouTube channel and go, oh my God, this guy he's an amateur, he's a ham and egger. No, but I've put a little bit of effort. You can see my little fancy camera right behind me, the Canon R5.
I got one like that.
I've tried to do some good stuff. No, but you'll find, all joking aside, you'll find on that YouTube channel, obviously different tabs or, whatever the heck they call them, channels that speak to testimonials, right? Where people will say, hey, this is how the program benefited me. In many cases, hey, this program saved me. This program saved my life. And you'll also get a good feel for, I'll say, a week in the life of Warriors Ascent. I've tried my best to kind of capture that as well. We've had some guests, students, people that want to help us out that have done similarly. They've spent a day or so with us and chronicled it, and their skills are far better than mine. And it's very nice to put it to music, but no, for my part, I've tried to, okay, here's what a week looks like and cover the high points day to day. So really, in the end, if anyone's wanting to learn more about our approach and what we're about, they can find it on that YouTube channel. If they want to hear testimonials from people that have been through the program that can speak with authenticity in terms of, hey, this is how the program impacted me, same thing. And just go to YouTube and then look for Warriors Ascent. And there it is.
So you've provided us with a seamless transition, because our next thing to ask about is, so, and obviously you're talking about how people can access success stories, but are there any that stand out to you that we don't have to call them your favorite, but maybe one that illustrates either a really good story or someone's really good turning around of their situation, something along those lines, or just illustrates kind of what is Warrior Ascent?
Again, if you get on that channel, you'll get individual videos. And what I've tried to do, there's some long form, they're 20 minutes where they're just, then I try to get the snippets, the short form. And then there's one like compilation. And I think what I've titled is Warriors Ascent Saved My Life. And I tried to curate ones where they were like, hey, this program saved me. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for this program, but I'll tell this one. So there's this guy, Mike, right? And backing up a little bit, I'll ask to interview people for those that are so willing. And I seldom have issues. People are like, absolutely. I'll say this, with this fella in particular and a lot of others, come Friday, for tomorrow, by the way, for our new graduates, we'll go around the horn and just ask them, hey, what did you get from the program? The intent there being not for them to go and, oh my God, this was this and that, but just to kind of recap the program and what they got from it. And then we also have people in the back, whether it's family members, other alum to show support, donors, and funders, and they want to show their support as well. But invariably, you'll hear somebody saying, all right, I feel so much better. I'm ready to share now. And I get, I'm not going to say tons, and I never want to oversell it, but we'll get people that'll say, I was going to kill myself, and I figured I'd give this program a shot one last time. And you're like, and I'm looking at that going, oh my God, that's a lot of pressure. I'm hoping, oh my Lord, that it worked. Right. And then, I'm hearing this person saying, hey, I feel so much better now. This program has been awesome. And I'm like, whew. But no, this one guy, it's heartrending. Mike, he goes, he said, I dropped my daughter off before coming to Warriors Ascent. And I knew that was the last time I'd see her, because I didn't think this program would work. I'd been dealing with this for the longest time. And they're like a 5-day program. No way. I figured I'd give it a whirl, but there's no way. And then he shared with us that night before that he's like, I had a gun to my head and I was going to kill myself. And my kids walked in on me. And he says, I put it down and I took that as a sign from God, that I got to give this program one last shot. I got to give myself one last try.
Man,
I got chills. Oh my God.
No, man. And he's still with us. And he'll say at the end of the video, he'll say, I've got, 2 kiddos that will tell you this program works because they still have a father. And you hear that, and I'm just like, oh my God.
Wow.
Others, will maybe not quite that dramatically, but will say, unequivocally, I would not be here if it weren't for this program. And again, guys, I'm a military guy. I'm not a marketing BS artist. I'm not going to, we are the great. I feel strongly we've got great efficacy as evidenced by that study. I've got plenty of anecdotal. And I've got plenty of people that will say unequivocally, this program saved me. Is that everybody? No. Most people,
Right.
I have yet to see someone on Friday go, this was a waste of my time. I got nothing. That doesn't happen. People are like, thank you. This really helped. But some people are in such a bad way that it makes the difference between life and death.
Well, I would think to some degree, like many things, that you get out what you put in, and those people are, I mean, the people that aren't desperate are coming thoughtfully, and they're going to put as much in as they can. But the desperate people probably get to a point, especially sounds like what you go over the first day, where that desperation makes them put a bunch in, and they get a lot out. It is what I would figure from.
Dude, that's a good point, man. Because that's the thing. It's like, well, 5 days. It's it's not a lot, but it's enough. It's a commitment. And you'll hear people say, it's just like, they'll say to themselves out there sitting, what got me to here? How could I let it get this bad?
Right.
This and that. And and the other thing too is when you ask, it's like, oh, well, is it people just separating from the service? Hardly ever. It's usually 3, 5, 7, 10 years down the road. And you're like, what? Because number one, I think they think, well, I'm dealing with this, but time and space will make it better.
Yeah.
I think to a degree, people get kind of manic. They
that
get really good,
be.
and then it gets rough, and then it gets good again. And so it's those good spells where they're not really seeking help. And I think that's why it drags on so long, is because then it gets really, really bad for some people. And that's when they turn.
That might be they've got the good with the bad, and when they come to us, they're finally really at that trough, really at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And not always, but or not every time, but
right.
I would say, a lot of times it's like, all right, I've let it go long enough. I need to make changes.
Mm-hmm.
Change is difficult in the business world. You've got the Cotter change model. And the first step is, understanding or agreeing that, hey, we have to change. That's the prerequisite, because it's not easy. Change is not easy. It's far easier to just stick with what it is that you're doing. But once you get to that point where it's like, if I don't make changes, I'm not long for this world.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to lose my family. I'm going to lose my job. That's when people are like, oh my God, I'm here. And to your point, that's when we like to say, trust the process. And all we ask of people is, hey, trust the process, be open-minded. There's nothing we're not saying, okay, guys, take a hit off the peace pipe, or something like that. Nothing crazy.
Right.
No pharmacology. No, take the red pill. Take that. It's all we're going to do is ask you to do meditation and mindfulness. You get some of the alpha dudes, Marine scouts, sniper swatches. Like, you want me to do what? Just meditate, brother. Trust me. And they're like, all right, if you say so. And then they're like, wow, this is wonderful. This really helps. It's like, yes. So that's the most, I'm not even going to say contentious, but when we say trust the process, it's not an extreme leap of faith. Like, we're going to ask you to do some crazy stuff, but it's like some of what we're asking you to do is maybe a little unconventional. We want you to journal, we want you to meditate, we want you to do yoga, and you're like, okay. And resoundingly, they're like, man, that stuff works. Thank you so much.
Meditation's funny to me because there's such a stipulation with that word and the concept. But what people don't realize is the basic, really even scientific, like kind of the point to it. If you even want to, if you're not into holistic things. So I'm kind of talking to you listeners right now too, as well, other than just having this conversation with Mike. But so when I was in college, before I graduated, before I joined the Army, I was always interested in Army stuff. So I actually had, it was either I had several books on like getting in shape, and as well as mental fitness was in there too. And I don't remember if it was either the SAS or the British, or it might have been Special Forces for the U.S. Army book, and it had a section in there on meditation, and it used that word and explained that it's really clearing the mind. And when you think of it almost like a mental etch-a-sketch, and really all you got to do is, as long as you can, 10 is kind of ideal is what the book said. I don't know how much of this is like spot on anymore, but maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe you need 15. I don't know. But so 10 minutes every morning was my goal. I would do some push-ups and sit-ups, that kind of thing. And then I would try to sit and think about nothing for 10 minutes. And that was meditation for me. And so listeners, I challenge you, if you are having trouble getting your mental game together, wake up 5 minutes earlier, or if you have 10 minutes you can set aside in the morning, just try to concentrate on nothing, even if it means just the word, because it's kind of hard to blank slate your mind. Try to do that, because what Mike's talking about is a really good key, and you don't have to go and like get on a yoga mat and burn incense or anything like that. It's nothing that complicated. It's just simply clearing your mind. And another method I found later was doing a menial task while listening to some music. So as funny as it is, sometimes taking apart and putting back together a gun several times while listening to like Bach. Again, just kind of simple stuff. So not to hijack that whole thing, but
No, I
making
mean,
the point of the meditation and people's stipulation of it.
no, that's a good point. You know, real good points, and I'll just maybe explicate some of that. So intention, one of our mindfulness coaches, a gal that is one of our providers, Amy Schonhoff from Mindfulness in the Heartland. She's wonderful. So when she's teaching, I'm like, oh man, I got to listen. And her big thing, which among many things, is intention, attention, and attitude, right? So when you like, oh, be intentional, but attention's important, right? Is one of the major components, obviously. So to your point, so many people, they can't pay attention. They're driven to distraction. So getting back to what you're saying about meditation, and I'll say the mechanism, the modality, call it whatever. So backing up a little bit, right? And why meditation is so integral and so powerful. So PTSD, right? Studies have shown that those that have undergone prolonged, severe trauma, your amygdala, right? Animal brain, your reptile brain that's responsible for fight or flight. They've actually shown that there are physiological changes that actually grows, it's enlarged and in more of a hyperactive state. So that is what prolonged trauma does. So when one wonders, why is it that somebody, if they're triggered, they can't back themselves back down? Because your brain is actually changed to the point where it's harder for you. There's some structural changes. I'll say the mechanism that meditation works on is that prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for logic and reasoning. So, we teach system 1 and system 2 that I'll say they're roughly correlated. So system 2, logic and reasoning, right? So that's prefrontal cortex. Emotions, right? So that's system 1. I'll say amygdala and all that stuff, but bottom line, subconscious things that you don't even have to think of or react to. Bottom line is, well, hey, if you're being hijacked, there's a term, if for those that are the readers out there, the book Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman, he talks about amygdala hijacking, where when somebody's in a heightened state of arousal, they're all worked up. I mean, I've got kids. When my kids get that way, there's no talking to them. There's no being logical with them. You got to bring them down.
Totally.
And that's where people go wrong. It's like, well, hey, just be reasonable. No, the first priority is you've got to bring yourself down from that heightened state of arousal. Once you're there, then you can do the logic and reasoning. But your first task, your first priority is that. So, okay, how do you do that? Breathing, et cetera, et cetera. But meditation, prefrontal cortex, what you're in essence, you're exercising that. So, Sam, to your point, it's almost like doing reps in the gym. That's what I liken it to. And military guys, that resonates with, because everyone's doing CrossFit and everyone understands, the fit principles, frequency, intensity, time, and, type and tempo and all that. But when you say, okay, hey, listen, meditation is kind of like reps for your mind and attention. So now, like what you said, it's like 10 minutes. I think studies have shown it's 13 to 16 is like the minimum effective dose. And the key is frequency. You need to do it every day. You can't meditate once a week and think it's going to have the effects. But the fallacy is, if you're not meditating for an hour straight a day, it's not worth it. That's not true at all. So you're roughly in there 10 minutes. I think, like I said, the studies are like, I think 13 to 16, but rough order of magnitude. Yeah, between 10 and 15 minutes is what you need. But what you're exercising isn't just let my mind be totally blank. What you're doing is you're bringing your attention. A great technique, and makes it a little bit easier and more productive, is an anchor. And that anchor can be a mantra. It can be Om. It can be peace. It can be a sound. It can be anything. It could be running water. Doesn't matter. But something that you want to anchor your attention to, because it's much harder to say, I don't want to think about this. I don't want to think about a pink gorilla. And then what's the first thing you're thinking of? I can't get this pink gorilla out of my mind.
Totally.
So it's better to go, okay, it's not that I don't want to think, I'm going to focus on something else instead. So that's where the anchor and the mantra comes in. But here's the deal. No matter what, even the Dalai Lama, those thoughts are going to intrude. It's just a human condition. The exercise is in you going, no. Okay, let me refocus on my anchor. You focus on your breath. That's the other thing. I mean, I'll use my breath, so my anchor will be, okay, really just focusing on deep diaphragmatic breathing, inhale, exhale. And I'm pretty good for a little bit. And then invariably it's like, what's for lunch? And then you're like, no, lunch later. Let me focus on my breathing. And the reps come in where you're realizing that you're losing your focus and attention, and you're bringing it back. So where people go wrong is they think, oh, I'm not good at this meditation thing because my mind keeps wandering. It's like, no, that is the exercise. You're never going to overcome that. It's the ability to quickly go, nope, come back. Okay. Nope, come back. That's the exercise. And I'll tell you, it translates trauma, so many different things in terms of even just productivity, the ability to go, okay, my mind's right. No, bring it back. It's just a skill that everyone needs to have, man.
Totally.
And meditation is the means to acquire that skill and exercise it.
Like that's one of the biggest things I started practicing since we both got back from deployment. And for me, like just kind of going back to where we started at the beginning, like talking about how you have no control over, the good and bad things that happen in your life. It's finding that baseline. Basically what you're saying is, you can always find that baseline. So like, even when things are really good, you got to bring yourself back because it's not always going to be way up here. You're going to have dips no matter what. So just finding that baseline, for me, that's what meditation has helped me do.
Yeah.
Just always come
it's
back.
Kind of like stoicism, in the Stoics, they're not, like Vulcans, like, emotionless automatons, but, for them, it's that virtuous mean, right?
Right.
It's that virtuous mean where
you're putting spot on.
Giddy with delight and everything's great, but they're not like, oh God, this, they're just kind of very even keeled and even tempered. It's like, hey, this is good, or okay, this isn't good, but hey, I'm never, that's what our our mindfulness coach and another one of our clinicians, talks about. Oh geez, I'm trying to remember now. In dialectical behavior therapy, she calls it the window of tolerance. And it's having this window of hyper and hypo arousal, being too aroused or not being aroused enough, just kind of being catatonic. But you want to have that window of tolerance where you can. Yep, I can stay in there. I'm centered enough to where if things get bad, I can bring it back. If things are like really good, I'm not doing crazy stuff. I'm still good.
Yeah.
So
is there any piece of advice you'd give to a veteran or service member that would that's their first day coming into your program? Anything like that?
I would just say, hey, trust the process, man. At least for our program in specific, nobody's going to ask you to do anything crazy. I'm a big data guy, was a systems engineer at school. So for me, I'm a big, Alfred Deming fan, where he says, without data, you're just another person with an opinion. Right. So for me, I like saying, all right, everyone, because here's the deal, man. It's like
that's going on our list.
Yeah. The BS meter. I'm awesome. We're awesome. Everybody says they're awesome, buddy. Show me you're awesome. And more importantly, let other people tell me how awesome you are. So for me, it does my heart good to know, hey, we got the testimonials, we got the data. Anyway, getting back to your point, trust the process. Nothing that we're going to ask of you is crazy. It's all, evidence-based, backed by science. And the other thing too is we get people that I know all this stuff. No one ain't anything. It's doing. So many people, I know how to exercise, and you're like, sure you do. Sure, I'll bet you do, but do you? And it's like, well, no, everybody knows do. That's the difference, man. So when people come through the program, what makes it work in large measure is we make them do it. And then lo and behold, on Friday, they're like, I feel better than I felt in a long time, if ever. And I always go, there's a reason for that. Because we made you do all these things.
Yeah.
So there it is.
We thank you for listening, and we hope you got something helpful out of this.
Right now, the best way to support us is to simply spread the word. If you know a fellow veteran who could use some resources to elevate their life, send them our way.
Until next time, remember to check your 0s, 5s, 10s, and 25s.